Good morning. Okay, we should see something up on the screen there behind. Okay. I'm really struggling this morning because when I came in, I had a sweater on. I took it off because I was too hot. Then you guys, I put it back on because I got cold. And then you guys started singing, and I'm hot again. So pray for me as I go through this. As you've heard, my name is Mark James. Thank you, Pastor Stephen. I have an honours degree in organic chemistry from Victoria University of Wellington. It was a long time ago, but today I like to describe myself as a lapsed, long-age, evolutionary atheist. If you told me 25 years ago that I'd be doing what I do today, I probably would have recommended some form of psychiatric intervention. Today I'm going to be operating two laptops, the one at the back and the one at the front, and I usually struggle with one, so if I look lost at any stage, it's because I am, okay? Today I want to give you a big picture of why it's important to be engaged in this issue, sort of like a Creation 101. And I want to start with a snap poll, some questions that you might have heard. What if your children or your grandchildren were to come home and ask, you know, if the Bible's true and it all started with Adam and Eve, where did Cain get his wife from? You heard that one? Yes. Okay. How about this one? If we all started from Adam and Eve, where do all the races come from? And then there's the dinosaurs. You know, we're told that there was a great age of dinosaurs. How come we don't see them in the Bible? And then there's probably the most asked question we get about the nature of God, and as a challenge to the Christian faith, if God is a God of love, why is there so many bad things that happen? Now, if you've heard a question like that, can I get you to put your hands up and keep them up there and have a look around? Because guess what? You're not the only one, okay? And I only asked 4 questions. Sorry. I am going to struggle with this. You know, people have dozens of questions. Questions that are an intellectual stumbling block to them believing the truth claims of the Bible. And you know what? We have answers to all of these questions. When you came in, you would have seen on the tables out there the resources, the books that we brought with us. Now, the first thing I need to say here is that we're not here just to sell you books, okay? That's not how our ministry works. We are a donation-funded ministry. Mums and dads like you around the country and around the world support us on a monthly basis. And this allows us to come into churches like this, but it also allows us to produce these resources to put into your hands for 2 main reasons. And hopefully as I go through my talk, this will become a little more obvious. But the first reason is so that you can equip yourselves with answers and your family with answers in order to strengthen your own faith. And then the second reason is so that you can fulfill the Great Commission and reach others with this information. Oh, now that's interesting. Why is that moved? Okay. I've titled my talk today, Genesis, Foundations for Truth in a Post-Truth World. Now, why have I used post-truth? Well, I don't know if you know this, but every year the Oxford Dictionary has a word of the year. And in 2016, the word of the year was post-truth. It describes a situation where personal beliefs are more important in shaping public opinion than objective facts. Now, I would like to suggest that we've been living in this post-truth world for a long time now, and the media and the Oxford Dictionary are finally starting to catch up. And nowhere is this more obvious than in the creation-evolution debate. See, there's a misconception that this is a battle between science and religion. But it's not. It's actually a battle of worldviews. Okay? Oh, yes. Our worldview is like a set of glasses or lenses through which which all of us, even our young people, once they reach the age of understanding, we develop it to explain the world around us. And a worldview provides answers to the 3 big questions of life. Firstly, where did I come from? Secondly, why am I here? And then thirdly, where am I going? What happens when I die? Now, many people today have decided that we're just the result of a huge number of unlikely events. 13.8 billion years ago, there was a big bang, and since then, time and chance have produced everything, including you and I. When we die, that's it. We're dead. There's no life after death. So if those are their answers to question 1 and question 3, then what's the logical answer to question 2? Basically, we have no purpose. We are just an accident, and ultimately, there are no consequences. So we can do whatever feels good. But if the Bible's true, God is our creator. You and I were created with meaning and purpose, and we're created in his image. And the decisions we make in this life affect where we spend eternity. But can you see that the answers people give to question 1 affect their answers to questions 2 and question 3? Questions 2 and questions 3 will always be determined by the answer to question 1. And there are only 2 games in town. It's either creation or it's evolution. So I've decided to depict this battle as like 2 trees. Now, Jesus himself talked about trees. Trees produce fruit according to their nature. And I want you to look at that left-hand tree. I've labeled it humanism. What's humanism? Humanism means humans are the ultimate authority in this world. We can make up our own rules. And there is no God, there's no creator to be accountable to. So how do people justify this worldview? Well, just look at the soil that this tree is planted in. It's planted in evolution. If you subscribe to this belief system, then what fruit will be produced? You see, racism, abortion. 3 years ago, New Zealand introduced the most liberal abortion laws in the Western world. Marriage has been redefined. And watch this space, because this is changing very rapidly under our feet. Euthanasia is now legal in this country. And there are already moves to extend this beyond the original remit, which was the terminally ill. And then there's the newest one that we're all seem to be experiencing at the moment, which is gender identity. We're not experiencing it, but it's something that is happening. These are the problems that we seem to be facing as a church today. But can I put to you that these are not the problems? These are the fruit of the underlying problem, which is humanism founded in evolution. Now, compare this to the tree on the right, the tree of Christianity. Everything we need to know about the Christian faith, where do we get it from? We get it from the Bible, right? The nature of God, our need for salvation. The Bible is a history book telling us what God created, what went wrong, and why we need to be saved. Most of our church doctrine today, our New Testament doctrine, comes from the fact that the New Testament authors believed that what was written in the Old Testament was history. Over 100 times in the New Testament, the authors refer to the book of Genesis. Jesus himself referred to the book of Genesis as history. He spoke of a real Adam and a real Eve and a real global flood. Now, if we subscribe to this as our worldview, if we believe that God is our creator, then we should produce fruit in accordance with that. We would believe in the sanctity of life. Abortion and euthanasia are wrong. Human beings are made in his image, male and female, and we'll love our neighbour as ourselves. Ah, dear me. Okay, there you go. Now, I want to make a key point here. Most people believe in evolution because it's all they've ever been taught. A lot of my scientific colleagues at CMI and myself are former evolutionists because that's all they were ever taught at school and at university. And in fact, at school and in our universities, your children and grandchildren are going to be taught that evolution is a proven scientific fact. If we know this in advance, surely we should be doing more at home and in the church to counter this anti-biblical narrative. This is an anti-God view that undermines the Bible from the very start. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If God is not the creator, where does the truth begin in Scripture? Does it begin in the New Testament? But the New Testament refers to the Old Testament. See, beliefs about where we come from ultimately affect our worldview. Now, I'm going to have to start by giving you some bad news here, but there is some good news, and I will get to it. But before I do, I thought I should lighten it up just a little bit. Okay. These group of students are talking, and one says to the other, "You seem a bit down. That science class of yours went for ages. What happened?" "Well, teacher said we're nothing special. We came from pond scum. We're just evolved apes." "So what are they teaching in your next class?" Self-esteem. Many a true word spoken in jest. If we teach our children that they've come from nothing, that they're going to nothing, that they're just evolved animals, why would we be surprised if they act like it's true? So what's the bad news? Barna Research is a Christian organisation in the US. They've been surveying the church in the US for many years, and their findings are actually relevant worldwide. Barna carried out a confidential survey of Christian teens in America. These were Christian young people who were sitting in church pews, and they were told they could answer confidentially. These young people revealed that only 1 in 3 of them intended to continue attending church after they leave home. See, this is a shocking statistic. And can I just say, I was here a month ago speaking to your youth group. You have an amazing youth group here. I'm not sure who enjoyed themselves most that night. I certainly enjoyed myself. What we're talking about here, though, is the church as a whole. And it's something that we really need to address. Intellectually, 2/3 had already decided that when they were old enough, they were out of here. Obviously, I wasn't part of this survey. But this basically applied to me when I was young. I was raised in a Christian home, but my family never really took the Bible seriously. And when I left home and went to university, I found it very easy to abandon my faith. Now, at CMI, we decided to take this research a little bit further to see if it really did translate into so many young people leaving the church. We sent a film crew into a university campuses in Atlanta. Atlanta's in the Bible Belt in the USA. And believe it or not, there are more churches in the city of Atlanta than in the whole of Australia. Okay? Yeah, I know. The results are actually recorded in a film that we put together called Fallout. As students walked past, the interviewer asked 4 questions. Oh dear. Here we go. Firstly, were you raised in church? If they said no, we let them go. We were only interested in those who had actually been raised in Christian homes. So we ended up with a sample of about 100 young people that answered yes to this question. We then asked them, creation or evolution, which is true? Of the 100 students surveyed, only 5 believed in creation. The rest said evolution. These were kids raised in Christian homes. We then asked, did your pastor... Now that's interesting. This has got very messed up. That's okay. We then asked, did your pastor or your parents or anyone show you any evidence that biblical creation might be true? Yep. All 5 that still believed in biblical creation had been shown information. Every one of the students who believed in evolution said they'd never been shown information. Some even laughed. They said, information? What information? There isn't any information. And then the last question. Are you still attending church? All 5 that still believed in biblical creation, of the kids who believed in evolution, all except 1 no longer attended church. The one exception is actually Okay, I might have to get you guys... Is it Joshua, is it? No, back up a bit. My long-range remote died on me this morning, so I'm using this little thing, and it's not quite strong enough. This means, so the one exception I said is that still attended church is included in the documentary so that we can show that we haven't fudged the results. This means that 94% no longer attended church. This is significantly higher than the 66% in the Barna survey, which only goes to show that once they left home, the assault on their faith was even more destructive. But there is good news. Of the 5 who were equipped with information, all of them still faithfully attended church. Now, if you want to see this documentary for yourself, I've got a free copy for all of you, and I'll show you how you can get that at the end of my talk. Information on this topic is absolutely key to be able to communicate the relevance of the Christian faith in today's culture. That's why we call ourselves an information ministry. And what we do as an information ministry is we produce information. Can we change that one, guys? Okay. One of the best resources we have is we have a free email alert service called Infobytes. You know what? Society seems to be shifting under our feet at an alarming rate, right? And even the new science that's constantly being brought up on the media and on TV and on the internet, often presented with a subtle and often not so subtle anti-biblical bias. Infobytes is delivered to your inbox every 1 or 2 weeks, and it's designed to keep you up to date with important breaking news in the creation-evolution debate. And it provides sound biblical and scientific answers to the challenges that we face. All you need is an email address. And if you have an email address, I would strongly recommend that you sign up for Infobytes. We're not going to spam you. And you can always unsubscribe at a later date if you decide that it's not for you. And there's no better time than now. So I'm going to get Hans, my wonderful assistant here. Hans is going to pass out sign-up sheets for Infobytes. Can we change that one? How are we going there, guys? Yep? Okay. All you have to do is jot down your name, your contact details, and your email address in the spaces provided. And when you're done, please pass it on so that everybody gets a chance. And I'm the person who has to put it into our system back at work, so please write clearly so that I can read it. Alongside Infobytes, we also have a very strong social media and web presence. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And we also, of course, have a website. And I'm very biased, but this is an amazing website. It now has more than 15,000 fully searchable articles on this topic. Written by our scientists and professionals, with a new article added almost every single day. And again, all the information on creation.com is absolutely free. And I want to give you an example of how you can use all this information in evangelism. Guys recognize this bloke? Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter. Amazing guy, actually. Australia Zoo is a couple of hours north of our Brisbane office in Australia. When he was killed by that stingray, our website was inundated with questions from skeptics and Christians alike saying, why did God design stingrays that kill people? So how would you answer that question? Well, what we did at Creation Ministries, within a few days, we had an article on our website. It was called The Stingray of Death. We then sent out an Infobytes to all our supporters with links to this article. And our people like you started forwarding this to all their friends and family to answer this question. And within 10 days, this became the most visited article on our website ever. Why? Because it was a hot topic, and the information in the article answered the questions that people were asking. Okay, so let's talk about some of the science. There's one thing you really need to understand about science. There are actually 2 different kinds of science. Science gives us technology. So my laptop, your cell phones, all the medicines we have. In fact, science put men on the moon, and they're about to do it again by the sounds of things. But actually, this is a very well-defined area of science. It's called operational or experimental science. See, operational science deals with experiments. These experiments are performed in the present. They are observable. We can see them happening. They're repeatable and they're testable. See, technology advances by building on experiments over time. But there's a different kind of science. Science that studies events that supposedly happened in the past. For example, did dinosaurs evolve from birds 65 million years ago? Did this happen in the present? No, it didn't. Did anyone see it happen? No, so it's not observable. Can we repeat it? Can we test it? We can't. These are one-time only events. No, I'll get you to change that one as well. Yep. Now, we're told that evolution is science, but it's not. Some Christians like to say that evolution is just a theory, but even this is not a good argument. In the scientific world, a theory supposedly has good, solid scientific evidence in support of it. For example, the theory of gravity. If I were to drop something, it would land on the floor, right? And I could repeat it over and over again. I could test it. Evolution is less than a theory. Evolution is a belief system. It's a worldview. It's a philosophy about the past that's used to explain what we see today. In our Fallout DVD, we finished by asking one more question of the students. What is your best evidence for evolution? And you know what? Over 90% of them came back and said the rocks and the fossils. The fossils and the rocks. Why? Well, the theory of evolution requires huge amounts of time to actually work, okay? And so an old Earth is absolutely essential if evolution is to be true. And we're told that the rocks and fossils are proof that the Earth is billions of years old. In fact, this whole idea of billions of years comes from the rocks and fossils. So, what are the scientific facts? Well, we see billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the Earth. Today, we see sediments being laid down gradually at a very slow rate. And if we assume the same rate throughout history, and we do the calculations, then the strata that you're looking at here would take millions of years to form. This is called uniformitarianism. The present is the key to the past. The processes we see happening today have happened throughout history. But if we put on our biblical glasses, can you think of any event in the Bible that would have resulted in huge amounts of sediment laid down by water and billions of dead things in those sediments? The flood of Noah. Okay. And if all the geological strata and the fossils were laid down in the flood over 12 months, because that's how long the flood lasted, where did the millions of years go? They've gone completely, right? And no millions of years means there's no time for evolution. This is why evolutionists are so dogmatic about the idea of an old Earth. And it's also why we creationists hold so firmly to the biblical account of creation. So what can we learn from the facts? Well, we'll start by looking at the Grand Canyon, that icon of long-age beliefs. In the canyon, we see alternating bands of light and dark material called geological strata. And in these strata, we often find very, very thin layers, only millimeters thick. And these are sedimentary layers. They're evidence of water deposition or wind deposition. And one layer, we're told, supposedly accounts for 1 year. Now, in the Grand Canyon, there are hundreds of millions of these layers. So the long ages assume that they're looking at hundreds of millions of years of Earth's history. Yep. And once these layers have formed, the Colorado River supposedly eroded the canyon over tens of millions of years. And again, if we measure the current rates of erosion and assume that these have happened throughout history, you can see how they conclude that it took millions of years for the canyon to form. But what does real operational science tell us? In Washington State in 1980, there was a volcanic eruption. You probably know it as the Mount St. Helens eruption. Scientists knew it was going to erupt. The mountain was venting at the top, and there were swarms of earthquakes. When it finally happened, it didn't blow its top, it blew its side. And 1/3 of the volcano erupted. And pieces of rock the size of a city block were thrown 10 kilometers from the mountain. It was amazing. But you know, we know that this is just a baby compared to some of the geological events that we know must have happened in Earth's history. In the aftermath of the eruption, bands of strata were discovered, very similar to what's found in the Grand Canyon, but on a smaller scale. The lady you can see at the bottom gives you a bit of an idea of the size of this formation. It was up to 30 meters thick. Now, in this section, can we change that one, guys? Yep. In this section you can see here, there are 3 distinct bands. If we take a closer look at the middle section, I don't think I'm the person changing it. Am I the person changing it? I'm not, am I? No. You know what? I might put that down. In this section, scientists found laminations. Thin layers had formed as the sediments were laid down. And in the middle band I highlighted there are thousands of layers. Now, the uniformitarian interpretation is that one layer is laid down every year. Using this interpretation, it should have taken thousands of years to form. But it didn't. This middle band formed on the 12th of June 1980 as a result of a pyroclastic flow in just 3 hours. And we also have dates for the other layers as well. All were laid down by catastrophic processes in a very short space of time. And around Mount St. Helens today, there are canyons everywhere. One is called the Little Grand Canyon. It's 1/40th the scale of the Grand Canyon. The uniformitarian interpretation, it would tell us that the little river that you can see down there ebbed and flowed over a long period of time and eroded the canyon. Today, there's a small river through that canyon, and, well, what are the facts? This canyon was actually carved in less than 24 hours on the 19th of March by a huge mud flow. The river did not create the canyon. The canyon formed and the river followed its course. So we know from operational science that sedimentary layers and canyons do not require millions of years to form. But surely it must take billions of years to turn soft sediment into solid rock, right? Actually, no. One of our supporters was walking along a beach in Australia and they found this rock lying on the beach. It looked very much like any of the other rocks on the beach. Did it take millions of years to form? No. They turned it over and inside the rock was a toy car. How old are toy cars? And you know what? That rock can be no older than the age of the toy. By the way, the information that you're seeing here today, it's not rocket science. As I go through my talk, you'll see little pictures of magazine covers on many of the slides. Most of what I'm covering in this talk actually comes from a magazine we produce called Creation Magazine. The magazine is probably the most important resource we produce because it's so easy to share the information with other people. Okay, so what about fossils? Let's move on to fossils. How do they form? According to the long-age view, an organism dies in water. It then sinks to the bottom. In this case, it's a dinosaur. It then sits on the bottom, intact as a skeleton, while it's slowly being covered up by sediment. And then, over millions of years, you can see the millions of years because of all those layers that are above it, it's eventually fossilized. But is this reasonable? Let's go back to the first part of that process. When something dies in water, does it sink? This is a school of fish that died off the coast of California. See, dead organisms in water do not sink. They'll generally bloat and float. Then what happens? Scavengers will attack the carcass and they'll start pulling it to pieces. What's left over might finally sink to the bottom, but does it just lie there for thousands of years while it's gradually covered up with sediment? No, it doesn't. Microorganisms, crabs will get involved. Then other microorganisms will continue the process of disintegration until there's very little left. See, would this result in the beautifully preserved fossils we find today? Fossilization actually requires rapid burial. A lot of sediment in a short time, either immediately after death or maybe as the cause of death. Only this type of rapid burial will seal the organism from scavengers and decay so that fossilization can take place. And there are some amazing examples we find around the world that can only be the result of this form of recent rapid burial. This is a picture of a female ichthyosaur. These are amazing creatures. They were 3 to 6 meters long. It's an extinct sea creature. Anybody know why we could tell it's a female? Is it the long eyelashes? No? We know that this is a female because it was buried and fossilized in the process of giving birth. Now, ladies, I know that labour can take a long time, but it doesn't usually take millions of years, does it? And here's another example for you of a fish fossilized in the process of swallowing its lunch. These are instants in time that have been recorded in the fossil record. Okay, so now we know that we need rapid burial to start the process, but surely everybody knows that it takes millions of years to make a fossil, right? Well, actually, no. Under the right conditions, fossilization can happen very rapidly. This is a soft miner's hat that was actually buried in the Tarawera eruption in 1886. And they found it 20 years later. And the hat and other articles had turned into solid rock. So this was a soft hat that turned into a solid rock hat. It had evolved into a hard hat. All that's needed to form a fossil is the right set of conditions, and fossilization can happen very, very rapidly. This took 20 years. Okay. Yep. These observational scientific facts that we've looked at, and there are many, many more. And if you come back tonight, I've got more stuff that I'm going to show you, so it's going to be a different talk tonight. I don't have time to go into lots of these things right now, but they're absolutely consistent with the biblical timeline. Real science supports the biblical account of creation. But I now want to move on, and I want to talk about the theological implications of this debate. See, the idea that the Earth is millions of years old is actually a relatively new idea. It was first proposed about 200 years ago. So how did the church react to this 200 years ago? I would like to say that the church stood firm on the account of Genesis, and they were united in the truth of the Bible. Sadly, that was not the case. Many theologians at the time were convinced by this new interpretation of the scientific facts, and the word capitulation would probably better describe how they responded. Interestingly, it was many of the scientists at the time, and in particular the geologists, who rejected this long-age evolutionary interpretation and clung firmly to the Bible. But for these theologians, science had proved the plain historical reading of Genesis wrong. And they decided they had to rescue the rest of the Bible, and the easiest way to do that was to reinterpret Genesis. As a result, and since that time, all sorts of different rescuing mechanisms have been proposed to try and fit, to make the Bible conform to this science. There's things like theistic evolution, progressive creation, day-age theory, the gap theory, and more. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of all these different theories, but I can tell you one thing for certain. They're all attempts to somehow reinterpret the 6 days of creation. Some try to incorporate evolution, some don't, but they're all attempts to add millions or billions of years into Genesis. They are all very different, and they can't all be right at the same time, right? In fact, the supporters of one theory will be very quick to point out all the problems with all the other theories. And they're right, there are problems with all the other theories. But they are very good at studiously ignoring the problems with their own theory while they're pointing the finger everywhere else. However, there is one major problem common to all the alternative theories, and it has profound implications for the gospel message. Oh, sorry, yep. At the end of each day of creation, God saw what he'd made and he declared it to be good. And it was good. And it was good. And at the end of day 6, God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. In Hebrew, this is tov miod. It means perfection, completion. It means finished. Any interpretation that allows millions of years, whether it's long days or gaps between the days, whether it includes evolution or doesn't include evolution, is putting millions of years before Adam and Eve. And where does the millions of years come from? It comes from the rocks and the fossils, which means the Garden of Eden must have been sitting on top of layers of rock, recording millions of years of death, suffering, and disease. And apparently God declares this to be very good. Is death very good? Can you see the theological problem here? See, death stinks. It's an intrusion into God's perfect world. Death is an enemy. The Bible tells us that it's the last enemy to be destroyed. When we see bad things happening, maybe a friend or a family member dies of cancer, or thousands of people are killed by a tsunami, this should remind us that something is very, very wrong with creation. It was Adam's sin that brought death and suffering into the world. There are over 100 New Testament references to this fact. In Romans 5, verse 12, Paul refers back to Genesis. Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man and death through sin, and in this way death came to all men because all sin. Now, I want to make an important point here. Okay? I am not saying that if you believe in evolution, you can't be a Christian. All right? We are saved by grace through faith. And that's an important point to remember. But even if you don't believe in evolution, if you add millions of years to the Bible, those millions of years come from the rock layers. The rock layers have fossils in them, and fossils are dead things. The result is death before the fall in Genesis 3. And it's a gospel issue. Should we take Genesis literally? It's actually been put very succinctly in this simple but profound piece of writing. If Genesis is not real history with a literal, very good creation, yep, and with a literal Adam and Eve, then sin did not literally enter into this world through their actions, which means you and I don't literally need anything to be saved from. People are not stupid. If we try to tell the world that Genesis can have multiple different interpretations, the world rightly comes to the conclusion that Christianity is no different to all those other religions. And there we're in a situation where we can't even answer that question. We have no sound foundation to tell people that Christianity is true. And our young people are not stupid either. Ladies and gentlemen, information changes lives, which is why our focus at CMI is on producing information in the form of resources. And this starts with our website. The lead article changes almost every single day. There's a search engine to help people find the answers that they're looking for. And the web address is, as I said before, it's creation.com. We also have 2 full-time information officers. One of them actually lives here in New Zealand. And we get thousands of questions from our website. And those questions are then sorted and they're sent out to our PhDs and specialists. Every single one of those questions is answered. Probably our best resource is called Creation Magazine, as I said earlier. People love this magazine. It's been going around for around about 40 years. It's an easy-to-read, glossy magazine with high-quality pictures. There's no paid advertising, and it even has a really nice little children's section in it as well. When people read it, they're often hit by people who believe in evolution, they're often hit by information that they've never heard before. Remember, most people believe in evolution because it's all they've ever been taught. Information changes lives, and I know because it changed mine. But don't just take my word for it. This is a testimony from a young man by the name of Phrygia. Your work was very important for me in becoming a faithful believer in the Bible. I was an atheist, convinced of evolution, until a year ago, and I started to listen to those crazy young earth believers, trying to disprove them. And here I am now, praise the Lord. And here's another from a young man who actually attended one of our events like this, and the speaker suggested that he email his testimony to us. Thank you for your ministry. As a child, a family friend bought me a subscription to Creation magazine. I attended public schools where evolution is taught, but with the information provided to me through your magazine, my faith was never shaken by evolution. I am now a Sunday school teacher, and my favorite topic is showing God's glory through creation. I attribute your magazine, a simple magazine, as a major contributor to the strength of my faith and my love of science. Thank you again. Now, we have 7 offices around the world, and we share an international database of testimonies, and we have thousands of testimonies like this. Creation magazine is effective. It works. And we're actually going to give you an opportunity to subscribe to the magazine today. So in a moment, my volunteer, Hans, wherever he is, he's over there. Not yet, Hans. He's going to pass around sign-up sheets to Creation magazine. Before he does, I want to tell you about some incentives that are only available at meetings like this. Oh, sorry, next one. Okay. If you sign up today, you get the print edition, plus you get the digital edition as well. Now, this is good for 5 devices. So your children, your grandchildren, your colleagues at work, they can get it on their tablets or on their smartphones, and they can read the information. So you get that for free today. And if you subscribe for a 1-year subscription, not only do you get the print version and the digital version, we also will give you a back issue so that you can start reading today. Yes. And one more. And if you subscribe for 2 years, you get, which is a little bit cheaper, by the way, you also get a DVD called One Human Family. Now, this is a talk by Dr. Carl Wieland, who's the former CEO of our Australian office. And he's an expert on race and culture. This is an incredibly uplifting and encouraging talk. And the second DVD we have is the documentary Fallout. So that's how you can grab a free copy of this DVD. When the sign-up sheet gets to you, I'll get Hans to start passing them out now. When the sign-up sheet gets to you, all you have to do is fill in your details in the spaces provided. And please make sure that you tick the box or box to indicate which of the options you've chosen. Can we move that one on? Yes. And then please tear off the bottom part and take it to the resources table after the meeting to get your free gifts. And if you're in a rush, just drop it on the table on your way out and we'll sort it out later. This magazine makes a great gift for believers and unbelievers as well. And if you're thinking of giving a gift, there's a tick box on the bottom of the form, and there's room for the recipient's addresses on the back. You know, this magazine is an incredibly easy and effective evangelism tool. When my family have finished reading the copies that we get, we actually take them next door and give them to the Chinese family that live there. And I know that their oldest son reads them. He now gets a subscription of his own. Okay, so while those are going around, I want to look at a couple of questions that people might ask. I'm going to cover more questions tonight, but I want to cover these 2. First up, what about dinosaurs? How do we explain dinosaur fossils that are supposedly 65 million years old? You know what? We don't have to. In the mid-1990s, a graduate student by the name of Mary Schweitzer found soft tissue in an unfossilized T-Rex bone. Listen to what she said. She said it was exactly like looking at a slice of modern bone, but of course I couldn't believe it. The bones are, after all, 65 million years old. How could blood cells survive that long? And the honest answer is they can't. Everything we know about experimental biology, chemistry, and physics tells us that this is impossible. But in recent years, Dr. Schweitzer and others have made some astonishing discoveries in dinosaur fossils. They found bone cells, they found fragile proteins, they found DNA, they found vessels that are still elastic. You can stretch them out, and when you let them go, they snap back. And these vessels are full of contents that you can squeeze out. This is in dinosaur bones. These discoveries were and are still surprising to us creationists with our 6,000-year-old universe, but they are absolutely catastrophic to the long-age evolutionary worldview. And I want to cover one more question for you. Where do all the races come from? You know what? This question highlights a very unpleasant but logical implication of evolution. Oh, that came up a bit quick. That's all right. If we evolved from an ape, yeah, take that off. Take that off. You didn't see that, okay? If we evolved from an ape-like ancestor, then it's highly likely that some people groups are more evolved than others. And how do we distinguish between people groups? Usually it's skin color, right? So I've got a question for you. How many different skin colors are there? I tell you what, if you had to describe me to the police, maybe you saw me going through somebody's handbag and I headed out through the door as fast as I can, which isn't very fast nowadays, and you called the police and you had to describe me to them, how would you describe me? I'm old? Yes. I'm bald? I wear glasses and I'm white? Thank you. A couple of times people have called out pasty. Yeah, I know. Sadly, it's true. But am I really white? You know, when the police catch me, the New Zealand police, they always get their man, and I am not very fast. When they catch me, they're going to take a mugshot of me, right? They're going to stand me in front of a white screen. Is my white face going to disappear into that screen? No, it's not. Why? Because I have a pigment in my skin. It's called melanin, and it's dark brown. Everybody on this planet has that same pigment. Some people have a little bit more of it. Some people, sadly like me, have a little less of it. But we are all different shades of the same color. We can now put up that picture for you. This is actually out of Creation magazine. This two-tone twins. These gorgeous girls have the same biological mother and father. Here they are as a family. The parents are actually mid-brown. And this is not an isolated case. There are many, many examples from around the world of twins with completely different skin tones. In fact, my atheist brother, I am working on him, but my atheist brother pointed out that I grew up with two girls. One was very dark, one was very light. They were twins. How does this happen? You know what? The better question is, why are we so surprised? If we read the Bible as it is plainly written, we are all descended from Adam and Eve. How many races are there? Just one. It's called the human race. Okay, that's all the science I've got time for. But after a talk like this, the first question we usually get at the resources table is something along the lines of, what resource would you recommend for someone who's interested in fill in the blank? So what I want to do now, to speed things up out there, because there's only me and Hans, and neither of us is fast anymore, I'm going to preempt a few of the questions that you might ask. So, if you're looking for a general overview, then I would highly recommend this book, The Creation Answers book. It has easy to understand answers to over 65 of the most asked questions on creation, evolution, and the Bible. I'm very biased, but I believe that this book should be in every Christian home. And you can actually get this book for free. All you have to do is buy the intro pack. You get Refuting Evolution, the best-selling creation book of all time, apparently, apart from the Bible, of course. You get Origins in the Modern World, and we throw in the Answers book free of charge. If your question is the age of the Earth, if that's what you're interested in, then we have a huge number of books out there. Probably the best of them is called Biblical Geology 101. If you'd like to look into a little deeper into evolution, then I would recommend this book, Evolution's Achilles Heels. In this book, 15 PhD scientists who were trained, they got their degrees from secular universities, they basically dismantle the theory of evolution. And this is available both as a book and as a movie. And if you're interested in dinosaurs, which I'm sure a lot of people are, then this book is for you. It's the most up-to-date and comprehensive dinosaur book that I know of. And if you're concerned about your young people, this book, The Creation Survival Guide, will help them to navigate the difficult school and university degree years and come out the other end with their faith intact. We've also got some great children's books out there, dinosaur books and Noah's Ark books, and not those silly bathtub arcs that you find in most children's books. What does the Bible tell us? Train up your children in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. I want to finish by returning to the three big questions that we considered at the beginning. Where did we come from? Why am I here? And where am I going when I die? Remember how our answer to question 1 will determine how we answer questions 2 and 3. If the Bible is correct in what it tells us about question 1, that we were deliberately designed, created by an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God, then it's only sensible that we look at what the Bible tells us about questions 2 and 3. Regarding the question, why am I here? The Bible's been described as a love letter from God. All the way through, it tells us that he created us to be the recipients of his love and that we are designed to love him back, to know him intimately, and to live a life, of purpose, fulfillment, and excitement. And what about the last question? Where am I going when I die? The Bible also gives us a very clear answer to this one as well. Remember how good the world was right at the start, before the entry of death and suffering brought on by sin? God promises restoration to a similar state, but this time it will be even better. The complete removal of all pain, suffering, disease, and death, in a place of intense joy and peace, in his close presence forever. See, Adam and Eve had the choice of either obeying God and living forever in a perfectly good paradise, or rejecting him and experiencing a future of pain and suffering that was never intended for them. Ladies and gentlemen, we all face that same choice today. You've probably already worked out that I could talk for millions of years on this topic, but I got one final thought for you. We have so much information today, more information than has at any time in the church's history. People don't get to hear about it because creation isn't allowed in the secular realm. In 1 Peter 3:15 we read, "Be ready always to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that is in you." And the next verse says, "But do so with gentleness and respect." Remember, you and I can't save anybody, but we are called to be faithful witnesses. Thank you. It took a bit of time to get through it. I apologise for that. But if you have any questions for us, we'll be at the resources table after the meeting. God bless.